tutorial, we are going to create a project folder for all your materials that we're going to make for your environmental scene. So basically I'm going to show you how to build a warehouse, and I'm going to take you through the process of how I'm going to build it, and I want you to follow and make sure that you're saving along to build this this environment that I'm going to show you how to build. Obviously you're going to make your own one eventually, and so I'm quite happy for you to adapt things, but this is just to give you the basis of how I would go about building an environment. And to start with, we need to create a project folder. We haven't been using project folders before now much, even though I have mentioned them in the introductory information, but apart from that, we haven't really mentioned it because I didn't want to overload you with too much information too quickly. But from now on, you'll probably want to use project folders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through to the Windows file folders, and as you can see here, I've got my own location. So what I would say is build your make sure you've got a folder with environmental tutorials or something like that, so that it's separate from whatever other projects you might be working on at the moment. And within there, like for instance, I've currently in my environmental tutorials got some materials. Now that's because I've been building stuff to create tutorials for making videos. So that's all in there. So I'm going to make a new folder. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to new and then folder, and we're going to call this warehouse. Okay, so that's my warehouse folder, and that means that our projects are all going to go into here. So we'll need to go back to Max now. Now there's two locations that you can set up your project, and there's quite a few options. So in the last few renditions of 3ds Max, we've now got a little drop down here. And it says here you can set active project, so you can make that your project. You can create an empty project, you can create a default, and you can create from current. And there's also on the main toolbar up here, you've also got the same again. So let's click away from that, and you can see it's got set active project, create empty, create a default, and create from current. So we're going to create a default. We're going to set this up as our default, so that when we open it will take us here. And once we've set this up as the default, it will keep referring back to this. And obviously you can still change it after. So I need to go to the location of the file that we've just made, which hopefully you will have also made. And I'm just going to find environmental tutorials, and then there's warehouse. So I'll select that and I'll select the folder. So that's us now set up, and as you can see, it shows here the files. So it's on my E drive. It might be different, obviously, on your computer, or it will be. Environmental tutorials, and then warehouse. And then if I click on our Finder window, we've got the warehouse, and if I double click, this was empty, as you can see, but we've now got our project folder. And as you can see, there's lots and lots of different files here. So I'll just take you through a couple of them. They're not all important at this time. Archive is if you sort of zip your files, your Max file, zip it to send it somewhere. If you to compress the file size and make it smaller, that's the place where you would maybe pop it if you archive it, which is something you might do later on. Auto backups is where 3ds Max saves your file that you've got here, and it usually saves it in, you can set the time to different times, but it usually saves it, I think, every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes or something like that. So it's kind of your fallback if your file corrupts or there's an issue, or you just go too far and you can't undo anymore, so you need to come back. You've got downloads, so things you've downloaded can go in here, obviously, and then there's export and import. There's material libraries. Now, you might think that's where you put your image files for when you download things to pop on, like your objects that you've made or your scene that you've made, but that's not the place for that. Material libraries is like where you save like various actual made materials in V-Ray, for instance, and stuff like that. and you've got libraries of stuff. So basically, don't put your images in there or your textures and things like that. Preview, so you can have preview files in here. Won't go over proxies. Got render output, render preset. Now the one that's probably the most important right now is the scene assets. And in here, this one that says images and your scene assets is where you will save any images or textures that you use within this project. So you'll go in here, you'll probably want to make another folder for each one to keep it all clean. And this is something we should all be doing. I must admit, if I'm just doing a single object, I don't always do this, but I should do, okay? And we all should do. And it will mean, because we've made this project and we've got the image set up here, we've got these structure. It means that if we copy this onto, for instance, a USB or pop it on our like shared drive and go and reopen it on another machine, it means that everything, like the images, will all be located in your Max file when you open up the Max file. So it's keeping everything tidy and making sure that all the paths actually link up. So it's important that you put your images in here. You've got photometrics, that folder, and that's for when people are using realistic lights. They can actually you can actually download data, like mathematical data, that says how a real light in the real world throws out light, and and how the intensity of it and everything, which is really handy if people are doing really accurate architectural renders. There's rendered assets. You probably don't need to worry too much about that. Sound, which you're probably not going to use, to be honest. I'm not sure what CFD. I'm not sure entirely what that is. And animations, and you can have animated textures, which is something that you do see every now and again. But I must admit, I haven't used that often. And then there's scenes, and that is where when you save this file that we're about to create, it'll appear in here. So we'll just do that now. So if I go and click back on our scene here, I'm going to go to File and Save As. So we're going to save this as Warehouse. Warehouse. Actually, one more thing, I'll just cancel that. There's something else I wanted to show you as well. And we have gone over this before, but if we go up to File and then Preferences, just remember that under Files, we want to have the convert local file paths to relative. And that was what I was saying before about your images that you're going to be able to place onto your objects in your scene environment. It means that those paths are relative to each other, and it means that when you use this on another computer, it should all hook up and you shouldn't have issues of textures and things not being found. Okay, I'll just press OK. So that was already clicked, and you should already have that clicked because I've shown you in other tutorials, but just in case, just make sure before we set this up. And now we'll go to File and then Save As. And then in here, 3ds Max file is fine. It'll just stay on the, if you have an older version at home, then you might want to back save, but remembering to do that is always an issue. So we'll call this Warehouse again. And I'll just press Save. Okay, so that's saved our scene. It's got nothing in it, but it will do soon, obviously. And then if I go to here, you can see we now have Warehouse. Okay, so there's one last thing I want to show you, and that's when you go to File and Save As. What I want you to do is make sure that you always save in like increments. So don't save over the first file that you make and just keep saving over it, okay? That's not a good idea, because if your file corrupts, you can lose everything. I've had students who have worked on projects for 3 months and just saved over the file and over the file, and then it's corrupted and they've lost everything and they're about to be assessed. So please don't do that. What you should do is every 15 minutes, make a save. Now, reminding yourself to do that can be tricky. You do have those auto backup files, which are like a last resort, but it's better if you save incrementally, and just remember that you need to keep saving and saving separate files so that you don't lose everything. And if something corrupts, you can go back to the previous save and you've only lost 15 minutes or half an hour. So we've got Warehouse here. If you click the little plus button rather than the save button, that will still save, but it will save an increment, so you'll have 1. And so if you click that the next time, it will make it 2, and you'll just keep having more and more saves. And I know it will make a long list, but it means if you have any file corruptions, then you can go back. It happens a lot less than it used to, but they still do happen, especially when you're like pushing the computer hard with an animation or something like that, or it's doing a lot of calculations on a really large scene. So just ensure that you make multiple save files and you use that little plus button to keep them ticking over. And now we've got this all set up, it means we've got a nice structure for our project where everything can be saved in the correct place, and it means that when you're switching between machines and things like that, everything should hook up and you shouldn't have any like missing assets or any missing textures. So I'll stop it there, and in the next tutorial we will start building the your first environment.